Okay, so as I say, we married in 1994, and then in 1999, just to set the background, we get invited by a family friend, Jeff. His daughter's uncle owns a villa in Provence in France, and he said, why don't you come? It's free of charge. So we thought, great. So that's what we did. So in 1999, we go off to France. So this is the first chapter, Mishaps and Mayhem. "You're driving on the wrong side of the road," screams Jeff, after I make a sharp turn right onto a bustling boulevard in Cannes. My heart races as his panic-stricken words sink in. Am I? Oh, crikey, I am. I have just seconds to manoeuvre my way out of imminent danger, avoiding a head-on collision with an oncoming car while dodging a massive truck on my right. I pull it off, but not without a deafening smack. The passenger wing mirror of our hire car shatters as the tail end of the truck catches it. The truck trundles on without a care in the world. I flash my lights at the driver, but I get 2 squirts of water on the windscreen instead. Undeterred, I keep calm and carry on, pretending nothing has happened. I'm in Provence with my husband, Don, our young son, Tim, and a family friend, Jeff. Don has had a disability since birth. He was born with spina bifida. Jeff also has a disability. He'd suffered a stroke 20 years ago. Tim is 4 years old. This is our first trip abroad as a family, as Don has never travelled overseas before, because he will not fly, and he's only ever had holidays in the UK. We had planned that Don would do all the driving in our specially adapted Daewoo estate car fitted with hand controls. The spina bifida has caused paralysis in Don's legs and feet, and he can't use the pedals. So the hand controls enable him to accelerate or brake using a lever with his right hand. But the reason I'm driving a hire car is that our Daewoo had a bit of a mishap. And then I go on into chapter 2 to describe what happened to our Daewoo. We had an accident up there, and of course, being a hire car, it had no hand controls, so it was left to me to drive it, and I wasn't used to driving not only on the wrong side of the road, but a left-hand drive as well. So, yeah, it was not quite a good the thing that we planned.
Right.
This next bit, I'm being asked to read out about chapter 6, Under Paris Skies. So after that chapter, what I do then is go back to how we arrived. So what happened was we went to Poole, where Jeff lived, picked him up. We caught the ferry from Poole to Roscoff, I think, and we travelled to Paris, because at Paris we were going to put our Daewoo on an overnight train and travel overnight to Provence, where this free villa was. So anyway, we get to Paris, have a little bit of a hiccup getting lost on the ring road. But anyway, we eventually make it to Paris. So I'll pick up the reading here. We have the entire day to immerse ourselves in the beauty of Paris and make the most of our time, taking in as much as we can of the vibrant energy of the city. Passing by the magnificent Notre Dame Cathedral, the church bells resonate in the air with the sonories announcing the services. We stroll across the River Seine, its sparkling waters reflecting the silver sky. Don in his calipers with walking sticks, and Jeff also with a walking stick, each of them with their individual and peculiar gait. I had thought that having Jeff with us would hold us back because of the stroke affecting his left side, but not a bit of it. I'm surprised to discover that once he gains momentum, he can walk as well as anyone. Going up hills is a bit of a challenge for him, so he zigzags it, and then it's no problem at all. It's stopping and starting that Jeff finds physically exhausting. But his experience as an engineer gives him the confidence that once his body is in motion and he gets into a walking rhythm with his stick, he feels safe and he can get a wriggle on. Don's disability also affects his mobility because of the tethered cord in his spine. But at this point in his life, this is 1999, he can walk with calipers and walking sticks. It's a good job they can both walk, especially as we decide to sample the Paris Underground, where passengers have to trek quite a long way to get to the platform. My feet are hurting and my arm is aching from dragging our small suitcase on wheels behind me, which contains all our bits and bobs for the overnight train to Provence later on. The train glides into the bustling station and I have to take a second look. It's a double-decker. I'd only ever seen a double-decker bus before. Crikey, I didn't see that coming. As for young Tim, he's the model of good behaviour as we hike through Paris on the Underground, revelling in the experience of being in a different country and a ride on a double-decker train. Then we go up the Eiffel Tower and Don suffers with vertigo. So he only made it to the first stage and he felt really nauseous and he had to be escorted off the tower by the guards. But so I explain a bit about that. But that's just a chapter giving an insight how navigating a city with a walking disability works. And as I say, at that time, my husband could walk, but as time progressed, he did take to using a wheelchair because he had a lot of falls. His knee kept giving away. He was offered an operation, but he was very nervous about that. And in the end, he decided to use a wheelchair, so several years later. But at that time, in 1999, he could walk with calipers and walking sticks. So we walked around Paris at that time. Well, I was asked to read from chapter 10, Capitou, which is a little village near to where our villa was, where we were staying in this free villa. So I was asked to read from this because it touches a bit on how Jeff's disability impacted our holiday, but we made the best of it. So our days are very much governed by Jeff's disability, because he'd had a stroke, if you remember, in that he needs to lie down and have a snooze each day at 3 p.m. because he gets buzzing in his ears and he starts feeling dizzy. But this routine works out well for all of us, and we settle into a relaxed timetable, enjoying a leisurely morning coffee, followed by a pleasant lunch somewhere. After lunch, we have a brief visit to either the beach at Cannes or La Napoule for an hour, before Jeff takes his nap. Even though Jeff isn't a particularly beach-type person, walking on sand is difficult for both him and Don with their disabilities. Jeff is considerate of young Tim and makes the effort to join us by the sea. We are impressed with the top-notch accessible parking on Cannes seafront, which helps us during our beach visits. Late afternoons and evenings see us back at the villa in the pool and jacuzzi. It was a really nice villa belonging to a wealthy Brit. Relaxing with a glass of wine or two. We go shopping one day while Jeff is taking his afternoon nap. But we discover that not only is Jeff taking his siesta, But the rest of Provence is too, and all the shops are closed till 5 p.m. I am not well pleased. Jeff had enthused about the village of Capitou, and we have to agree it's utterly delightful. We enjoy leisurely morning coffees there and watch the locals play the game of pétanque or boules in the square. This is a rare and special treat for our family, sampling French life. In the quaint village, the boulangerie beckons with its aroma of freshly baked bread and tantalising sweet treats. The sight of intricate pastries and golden baguettes is enticing. Moreover, the fixed price lunches, with their affordable and satisfying options, add another layer of culinary bliss. And let's not forget the Mandelieu market, where the aroma of succulent rotisserie chickens waft through the bustling crowds, drawing me in. These simple pleasures bring us much joy. Okay, so yeah, I mean, obviously when Tim and Don travel together, Tim does help with some of Don's caring. But so when he was 12, he wrote a poem, and it's called Two Are Better Than One by Tim the Carer. My dad's in a wheelchair because he's disabled. As one of his carers, I tried to make him enabled. I can fetch the cordless phone without giving a groan. I also open the door, but there's also so much more. I can make him smile when he feels low. It's all part of being a carer, you know. We work together as a team. It's not as easy as it might seem. I've washed my dad's hair while he sits in a chair. I've given him a shampoo, and I've blow dried it too. I've even made sure he can get to the loo. It can be quite tiring pushing the chair, even if we don't aim to take off in the air. My dad helps me too when I've homework to do. Two are better than one, and much better than none. I can't remember all that I do, just being there and making a stew. These are some of the things, to name but two. But I must finish now because there's lots more to do. I hear my dad calling. I'm off just in case he's falling. Being a carer is being a pair. It's all about really showing you care. So that was a poem that Tim wrote when he was 12. Okay, well, the next one I've been asked is to read from chapter 30. It's called Globetrotting without Don because it's where I did some travelling before I met him. But I begin the chapter just setting the scene. So, what does someone in a wheelchair do if they need the loo? How do they board a plane? How do they cross the road if the curb is so high they can't get down it? Can you board a coach if you're in a wheelchair? Can you get into all the shops and cafes? Are the doors wide enough? Can you get onto all the buses and trains? Can you get into a taxi? As a non-disabled person, such questions weren't on my radar at all before I met Don. But thankfully, accessibility is so much better than it used to be in many parts of the world. But things have not always been easy for disabled people, including the UK. In the early 1990s, two disability activists, Barbara Lasicki and Alan Holdsworth, became trailblazers for disability rights in Britain, bringing about the Disability Discrimination Act of 1995, which is now the Equality Act of 2010. During the early 1990s, disabled individuals in Britain encountered numerous obstacles in various aspects of their lives. They faced difficulties in finding employment, difficulties accessing suitable housing, difficulties using public transport and entering public buildings such as shops, restaurants and cinemas. At that time, it was commonly believed that disabled people should be the passive recipients of charitable donations. They were not seen as equal, independent citizens with legal rights. But things began to change when disabled individuals flooded the streets, unleashing chaos with their impassioned protests, fastening themselves to public transport with chains and wheelchair users barricading roads, their chants echoing loudly through the air. The film, When Barbara Met Alan, depicts how pungent the scent of determination was which hung in the air as the disabled protesters caused havoc, with police officers having to lift disabled demonstrators from their wheelchairs. Amidst it all, the resounding cries for civil rights reverberated, highlighting the injustices that they confronted. These protests ignited a fire within disabled individuals, revealing their newfound ability to wield influence on the lawmakers. And it worked. By the early 2000s, as Don began using a wheelchair more and more, accessibility was improving year after year. And when we began travelling abroad together, disabled people could access many more places, and so on. So that just sets the scene that disabled people really had to put up a fight, you know. It sounds like, you know, they were doing things that just Stop Oil do these days, chaining themselves. But they had to get their voice heard so that they could influence the lawmakers and be acknowledged as independent citizens with legal rights. Yeah, I mean, we did, in the end, we did go on some cruises because some of the cruise liners are fantastic for disabled people. The accessible cabins are marvellous with wonderful bathrooms, and there's very few places they can't get. Obviously, it's a bit difficult if the ship docks at a place where there's a tender. But we found that cruises are really, really good, especially for Don, who won't fly. He's an aerophobe. I mean, he just doesn't want to fly. Not just from the point of it's awkward being in a wheelchair, but because he is afraid of flying. So we found going on cruises, we could see a bit more of the world. Yeah, the one we went on, the Queen Mary 2, the person we booked it with didn't get that Don's disability needs at all, and we were put in a most unsuitable cabin, but you could read about that in the book. But I'll read a chapter, just a little bit, not a lot, it's not a lot, from chapter 46, because Don eventually also got an electric wheelchair. So he had a manual for inside our bungalow. We've got a bungalow. But eventually he had an electric wheelchair. So I'll just read this chapter briefly. So this is now 2008. Don now also has an electric wheelchair for outdoor use, as well as his manual wheelchair, which he uses inside the bungalow. I was finding pushing him up hills in his manual wheelchair a struggle, especially as he put on more weight. He's 19 stone now. Even though he has a lot of upper body strength, he found it tiring to wheel himself. So the electric wheelchair is a fantastic asset, but it wouldn't go into we had a Toyota Yaris car then. So we had to invest in a much larger vehicle to accommodate an electric wheelchair. Now, if you're disabled and you want to enjoy a comfortable standard of mobility, it can't be done on the cheap. So we'd remortgaged our bungalow, enabling Don to purchase a Mercedes Sprinter van with a high roof fitted with a wheelchair lift. I couldn't help but give our new Mercedes a name, Primrose. Such a dainty name for a colossal vehicle. I love the incongruity. Now, Don meticulously research the type of van and wheelchair lift that would best suit him and his needs. But it's not as easy as it sounds. And for several months, we traipsed around the country looking at many second-hand accessible vehicles, but they were all completely unsuitable. So a brand new vehicle, which would tick all the boxes, was the best and the cheapest solution. It would last for many years, and we've still got Primrose. She's 16 years old now. So she has lasted a long time, and hopefully we'll get, more years out of her. The high roof in Primrose also meant that Don, who's over 6 feet tall, didn't have to bend his neck at an awkward angle. A lot of the vehicles he was having to really duck low, and every time he got in or out. And the wheelchair lift he chose was a Braun made in America. It's ingenious. It came out neatly at the side, lowered down. He drove onto it, he lifted him up and then backed him into the van. So it meant that he didn't have to enter his vehicle on a long ramp from the side or the back. So it was just a neat little lift. But the cost was eye-watering. We could have bought a small house somewhere for what we paid for Primrose. But she gave us so much more freedom to travel, and it meant that Don was now independent, so he could get in and out of the van himself without my help. And he can transfer from his wheelchair to the driver's seat, so he is able to do that. He's got a little bit of strength in his legs, and he just transfers himself over. It's a bit strong, but he can do it. So, yeah, and then I go on to say how I pranged it on the second day. My driving is terrible. But anyway, it's all in the book, but that's, I was asked to read out that chapter just to give an insight into, yeah, a vehicle can really make a huge difference to the carer and the cared for.